All right, hello everyone. So today I am sewing a brand new pattern I've been working on. I'm really excited by this pattern. It's a really cute summer spring dress and it comes with two different views, the Winnie and the Mabel. They're named after my mum and dad's dogs who are super cute. And the Mabel is a little bit longer in length and the sleeve is a little bit longer. It's got a bit more of a modest neckline, and then the Winnie has a collar and button up front. The buttons are decorative though, and it is a little bit of a shorter length with pockets and a shorter sleeve with a cuff, but all the pieces can kind of be interchanged. If you want to add pockets to the Mabel, you can. If you want to do a cuff sleeve, you can. So it's sort of flexible in that way, but the general basic shape is a quarter circle skirt, a nice fitted under bust and waist section, and then a little bit of a gathered top. So the first one is, I'm going to show you, is the Mabel. So it's got the nice longer sleeve and skirt. I love this under bust section. It's probably one of my favorite details. I've done this on a few different dresses, so when I was designing this pattern I knew that was a detail I really wanted to have. And with the little gathers under the bust and a little bit at the back, it just gives a little bit more room and femininity to it. And it's got facing, but it's unlined, which personally I like for summer because I find even if you use cotton on cotton, it can get a bit hot unless the fabrics are super light. This is designed for rayons, cotton lawn, linen, anything really light and flowing. So this is a cotton lawn, so you can see it's not super flowing in the skirt, but it does hang really nicely. So yeah, and it's got an invisible zipper in the back of both styles as well. And today I'm going to be sewing through the Winnie, and this one I actually did fully lined. Now I know I just said I don't like lining in summer, but this one, because it is a white fabric, I felt like I needed to line it. Otherwise you just get into a little bit too dangerous territory of it being see-through. So it's got the lovely pockets, got the buttons, which like I said, they're completely decorative. And then the collar, which I just think adds a really sweet touch. And again, zipper in the back. The zipper doesn't go all the way up to the top because the collar's there. That's the main difference in that construction. And this one was a little tricky to construct because it is designed to have facings and not lining. So you'll see while I'm making it, there's a few steps I probably could have done a little bit differently, but it all did work out in the end. And ultimately, if you did have something like this, you can just use it as one fabric and another and use them as the same fabric, if that makes sense. With this, I did want to bag everything out, so everything on the inside of the garment is like super neat. There's no seams showing except for at the armhole and then the hem. But yeah, that's completely unnecessary. That's just me being extra, and it did make it a little bit tricky to sew some areas, but I think it was worth it in the end because it is very sweet. And this again was made out of a cotton lawn, so it really is designed for that nice light summery breezy fabrics. So yes, let's get into making it. Alright, so to start off with, I'm going to cut everything out. So the main, I'm cutting all pieces, and the lining, I'm just going to cut the front and back body, the front and back underbust, and the front and back skirt. And then in fusing, I'm going to cut the collar and facings. Even though I'm lining this rather than facing it, I'll use that facing piece on the lining just to secure the neckline a little bit. So all the instructions are obviously included in the pattern, but pretty much just need a pair of the front and back, a pair of the underbust, sleeves, pockets, the skirt, and the skirt front is on the fold, and then the cuff pieces and the pocket pieces. I think that's all the pieces. There are quite a few in this. Oh, and the two collar pieces. I don't know if I mentioned that. There are quite a few pieces in this pattern, but like I said, they are interchangeable between the Winnie and the Mabel because a lot of the pieces do overlap, so everything kind of fits together well, which is something I really wanted to try to achieve with this pattern. So just unpinning everything here and cutting the fusing. I just used a very lightweight interfacing for this. So first step is going to be with the body. We're going to attach the shoulders with 1 centimeter seam, just stitching it, no overlocking or anything because we're lining it. If I wasn't lining it, I'd overlock it. So right sides together, join the shoulders, and it should look a little something like this, and a little something like that when you fold it out. And I've done that for the body, outside and lining. So both pieces are done. And then I will grab the sleeve and gather the shoulder between the drill holes and attach it to the main body. So I'm just going to do this for the main. I would have done this a little bit differently and done it for the lining as well after doing the neckline in hindsight, but that's okay. It still works. So now I'm going to join the side seams. So again, this is something I would have done differently in hindsight, but it still worked out fine. So just side seams with right sides together. So for the main and for the lining, and for the main you're going to sew through the sleeve side seam all the way down. For the lining it's just the body of the side seam. And then we will also do the side seams for the underbust panels. So again, for the main fabric and then for the lining. So just matching up those short edges there, and just 1 centimeter seam. And again, no overlocking or finishing these because I am lining it. It's all going to be enclosed. So it looks a little something like this. And from the outside, it looks like this. So very neat finish. And I'll just add the gathering stitches for the underbust and the back now. But then we'll move on to the collar. And I'm just going to place these with right sides together and then stitch the short edge around the long edge and clip in to the curve and the corners so that it can turn out neatly. So you can see here I've clipped in, and I'll fold it right side round, and then I suggest pressing and edge stitching. Edge stitching is optional, it just stops it rolling or anything. But yeah, pressing it will definitely help give a crisp look. It's easier to press it now while it's flat before it's attached to the garment. So yeah, and although clipping helps a lot with this process. So the collar should look nice and crisp at those corners. And then I'm going to stitch up a little bit of the back. This is so we can attach the collar because without the back stitch we can't. So I'm going to attach it by 6 centimeters, and I'm doing that because that's the length of the facing. So if you have the facing, you would just stitch the whole length of the facing, but because I'm doing the lining, I'm just doing that as 6 centimeters. And then I will now add the collar to the neckline, so I'll match the notches for the collar placement and match the center back of the lining and the main, and the shoulder seams on the main and the lining as well, just so everything when it's turned right side out is sitting correctly. So those are the notches there that I'll place the collar onto, and the collar will be facing right side up, the main facing right side up, and then the lining will go right side down on top of that. So it's sort of sandwiching all those 3 layers together. This is important to do before attaching the underbust because you need this front edge to be finished before attaching the underbust. This is where I probably would have done all of this before doing the sleeve and the side seam in hindsight. So if you do want to line it, I suggest doing it that way around. But this is how it looks like all done. And now I'm going to edge stitch it. I do suggest edge stitching even if it's not something you usually do. I've also clipped into the curves a bit here just to help it turn right side round. Edge stitching just keeps the lining on the inside of the garment, or if you're doing the facing, it keeps the facing on the inside of the garment. So it is a very helpful step to do, and just makes it look a little bit neater and helps you when you're wearing it not show the lining. You can see I've sneakily added a label here. So you'll press the collar in place, the front sits flat, the back has a little bit of a collar stand. And then I will also overlap the front. There are some notches to match up there to make sure it's overlapping the correct amount. You can baste if you like. I like to just pin it because it's easier, but completely up to you. So we'll also attach the underbust section and leave the back 5 centimeters open. So we're going to sandwich it between the lining and the main underbust section. As you can see, I'm placing it here, making sure the side seams match. But then I'm going to leave that back 5 centimeters and take it away from the machine and sew just the lining to the underbust lining and the underbust main to the main top section, if that makes sense. I will show you in a minute. And then I'm also going to sort out the armhole. This probably is the trickiest bit and why I would have done it differently. Because of how we sewed the side seam, it's a little bit tricky to sew the armhole. So I'm going to overlock this together so it has a neat finish. I could have folded it all in and hand stitched it, but I like the seam facing outwards. So yeah, it's sort of one of those tricky things. I didn't think things through 100% there. And like I said, it's not designed to be lined, so I made things harder for myself. As you can see, I did get it done. I just had to clip into the seam right at the side seam, but I didn't obviously break the seam at all, and it's not bulky or anything, which is good. It just took a little bit more finessing, so I would do that differently if I did it again. And you can see here, these are sandwiched, so it doesn't open up any further than that. And then at the back, it is open on those back edges, and that's for inserting the zipper. You can leave it more than 5 centimeters. It probably would be easier to leave it more than 5 centimeters. I just think that it sits a little bit nicer when it's not all loose, but it's completely up to you. It's definitely easier if there's more than 5 centimeters there though. So yeah, we're just going to place this aside now and grab the cuff pieces and these nice rectangles, nice and easy, fold it in half and sew that short edge 1 centimeter. So really nice, simple. I love these simple steps like that. And then we will press that seam open. That just prevents any excess bulk, and fold it in half long ways. So we've got a nice clean finish at the edge there. And then we're going to attach that to the body. You can also press it now as well because that'll give it a nice crisp finish. So when we're placing it, we're going to have the right side of the sleeve facing up and the right side of the cuff facing up as well. That's just because the seam that we're going to sew at that bottom edge there of 1 centimeter is going to be turned in. So I'm going to sew it around 1 centimeter and then turn it in and top stitch it down. And then I will also tack under the arm, just so that it stays down. You can also tack it in more places if you're using a softer fabric and you feel like it might need that. So you can see here it's done, and I've just edge stitched that down. You can definitely stitch closer in if you need to, if you find the seams popping out at all, and just tacked there so it stays up nice and neat. And the top is looking good now, which it's always nice when you get to a stage where it looks like a garment. For the pocket, we're just going to overlock all the edges. You can finish them however you like though, and fold the top edge down 2.5 centimeters. I like a nice hem on the top of my pockets. I just think it creates a really nice look, and a point of difference as well. So here you can see I've top stitched that down, and then we're going to place the pocket using the drill holes on the pattern and just fold the edges in by 1 centimeter. So I've replaced this one here, but you can see it's overlocked and folded in 1 centimeter. And I'm just going to edge stitch around that. You can stitch as far in as you like. I just think an edge stitch is a little bit neater. And then we're going to get the skirt side seams done. So right sides together, straight down the side, 1 centimeter. And I'm not going to finish off these edges either. And do the same for the lining as well. And then the skirt should be looking all full and beautiful now. So we will attach it to the body. So we're going to do this with right sides together. And because we left that bottom edge of the underbust separate, we're going to do the main to the main skirt with right sides together and the lining to the lining skirt with right sides together. And it's important to match up the side seams. You may need to ease the skirt a little bit and the underbust a little bit to fit together just because of the curve, but it should all fit in nicely and sit flat once on the body. And yeah, here it is all done. So you can see it's kind of very confusing at the moment, all like sandwiched and wrapped around each other weirdly, but the lining is free from the body except for at that seam right under the bust. So yeah, looking very much like a dress now, which is exciting. And now we're going to add the zip. So this can be a little bit tricky, especially with the lining. It's particularly tricky. But what we're going to do is place it with the back facing up and put the zipper tape over the top. I like to place the zipper how I want it to sit first, just to kind of get yourself orientated. And then we're going to place it so that the zipper is right side down, and then the zipper tape is facing the edge of the seam, and the zipper teeth are facing inside, like to the correct side of the garment, if that makes sense. And I'm placing the stopper just right at the top near those stitches from the back, and I'm just going to stitch down all the way down to the bottom of the zip, and I'll do that for both sides. So it should look something like this, nice and neat. Make sure you take care to match up the seams at the waist, otherwise things can look a little bit messy. So pin or baste if you need to. So now comes the tricky bit, adding the lining to the zip. So we're going to do the same seam basically, just with the lining. So we need to turn things inside out and then place it with the lining right side facing the main right side. And you can see here it's very tight. It is possible to maneuver it all. It just can't all be pinned like that, unfortunately. So I had to move it a little bit by little bit on the machine. And things kind of get all tucked into each other. So make sure you're just taking a lot of care and only sewing through the layers you want to sew to. So you can see here how like tucked in it gets when you're sewing it. It looks a bit silly, but it works in the end. You'll see it pulls out very neat, but it can be a little bit confusing. So just take your time if you are going to do this. As you can see, it does create a really neat finish there. But yeah, just take your time with this one. It is, even for me as an experienced sewer, it's something I need to take my time with. And then this is what it should look like. So like I said, if this is too confusing, because it is a very sort of premium way, because you only have very neat finishes, you can just sew the lining to the main body as like one piece, and have the seam exposed. There's nothing wrong with that. But now I'm just going to sew the back right sides together. This is a nice easy seam. So from the zipper down to the hem, I'm going to stitch that 1 centimeter. Nice and straightforward seams. We like those ones. And then I'm going to leave it to hang overnight. So this is what it will look like once it's all done. Press those seams open as well. It will give a nicer finish to it. But leave it to hang overnight because it is a circle skirt, and then I will measure the skirt and cut off any excess that needs to be cut off. And we'll also add some buttons. I just added 2, but you can add as many or as few as you like. They are just decorative. So here I'm just measuring the skirt. It didn't drop too much, which is good, but I did need to cut off a little, and the lining I cut off about 10 centimeters. This is just so the lining doesn't show. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video and like this new pattern of mine. Like all of my patterns, well, all the ones that I have gotten around to upsizing, and all future patterns, it is available over 8 sizes. And if your size isn't available, feel free to shoot me a message, and no extra charge. I can size it up or down as needed. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Check out my Instagram. I'm so much more active over there. And yeah,